Hello, fight fans, and welcome to the Combat Challenge podcast. My guest today is an MMA athlete and a coach. He is also the head honcho of HAMMA Academy, Mr. Sean Martin. Sean, thank you so much for joining us, my brother.
Absolute pleasure being here, mate. So, we've been friends for a long time, me and you, mate. So, absolute pleasure.
Well, when you said you were going to come on and do this podcast, I was really pleased because it's not just those that are competing. We want those that are coaches and passing on their knowledge. So thank you so much. I appreciate that, my friend. One of the things I want to ask, and I ask this from everyone that comes on, what has been your martial arts journey from a young age where you were involved in sport, etc., that has led to where you are now? If you can share that with myself and the viewers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from the Knowsley area of Merseyside, which is just outside of Liverpool. And a couple of my cousins used to do traditional jiu-jitsu, and I was always like, shall I go, shouldn't I? And then my dad was like, very old-fashioned, I'll take you to the boxing gym. So when I was a kid, I sort of toyed with boxing. And when I say kid, I mean like 10, 11. But I was never a confident kid. I was always a little bit overweight and suffered a little, not bullying, but sort of just teasing at school. When I was about 15, 16, it was a traditional Kung Fu gym, literally half a mile from my house. It wasn't a gym, it was in an old Red Cross hall. And there was an old guy called Eddie there. And for the first 6 months to 12 months, we done traditional, I don't know, Hung Gar Kung Fu, which is a very traditional form of Kung Fu. I enjoyed it, but I always felt that I needed to do something more. And my body was changing. I was going from a chubby child to, a 6'1" big lad. And I've always been around, even when my first fight when I was 16, I was 92 kilos, so, I'm not a small guy. My dad's a big guy. My brothers are big guys, so, and I was just always fearful of being a big guy, having to fight big guys, And what happened was, Eddie sort of was getting a bit old, and he was very traditional based. And unfortunately, he passed away. If I'm being really honest, he liked to drink. And it sort of led to him dying in his 60s. He was a great coach and a tremendous man. But one of his students, Ian Wilson, sort of took the gym on, and we moved a little bit up the road. And he started going down the freestyle route of Kung Fu, which is very sport karate, freestyle Kung Fu, very much your sort of Wonderboy Thompson, Venom Page style, 1 point in and out. And that's where I started really learning how to fight properly and get hit, learning a lot more about stances, a lot more about kickboxing, basically semi-contact kickboxing. And that's basically when they say sport karate, freestyle, Kung Fu, freestyle karate, it's all based around points, getting in there quick. But what I found was me being 90 plus kilos and 6'1", believe it or not, I'm short. I always have been short in the heavyweight division. 6'1" not a tall heavyweight. When you're fighting guys. And in the semi-contact game, the guys who were at the top level of the sport at that time, like your Pele Reeds and your guys like that, they were all 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". So that point system, I started getting very frustrated because I'd always get to a quarter final and just miss out on a medal, and I thought, is it me? Is it? It was frustrating. And my coach said to me, Ian Wilson said to me, why not go continuous, where you don't fight for the points, you just fight for the 2-minute round, and then you can hit each other as much as you want. And that was bang, that was my martial arts journey starting there and then. And then that spiraled into full contact kickboxing and then later K1. Yeah. And then from there, when I was about 17, I sort of left it, got into bodybuilding and weightlifting. And then when I was about 19, I went back with a K1 coach, Albie Bimpson, who I ended up getting my black belt downgrades off. And loved Albie. I still stay in contact with Albie this day. So Ian Wilson and Albie Bimson are my legends, really, because without these two guys, my journey would never have started.
And then after that, what did you go into any other martial arts, or was it mainly the striking you were into?
So I done really well in the kickboxing as a competing under 21. I won a few national gold medals in certain competitions. You know what it's like in martial arts. I'm not going to say I was a British champion because there's 17 different categories of British champions, but in that certain field, I'd won a few gold medals. Let's just say that. What used to shock people with me was how flexible I was, because I'd always land spinning hook kicks, head kicks. And again, coming from a big stocky lad, no one really expected it. The only guy I've ever seen throw kicks like me at my weight was the Ultimate Fighter back in the day, Seth Petricelli. Do you remember him? And he was little stocky heavyweight like me, 6'1", and he was left head kick, right head kick, spinning up kicks. And he was the very first guy I seen. He was very famous because his ear exploded on the Ultimate Fighter with a cauliflower ear. And he was the very first fighter I seen. I thought, you know what? You know, I'm as flexible and as good as him, you know. And I'm talking like, this was like, you know, I seen him fighting on Pride before he was in the Ultimate Fighter. And it was just like bang, bang, bang. But I was always missing, my striking was always there, but I was always missing the grappling base and the judo, jiu-jitsu, you know, sambo base. And I was on the door in St. Helens. I was working as a bouncer. And we had an incident. It sounds like I'm trying to be Bruce Lee here, but I'm not. We had an incident where we had it was St. Helens. It's like yourself coming from West Yorkshire yourself. You know, you got a lot of big lads. You play rugby league there, play rugby league. St. Helens is like the Manchester United of rugby league. So, or the Liverpool with Wigan, you know, one or the other. And they're all big lads. So we ended up having this scuffle. I got head butted on the way out. So I lost my temper a little bit. We got to the lead doors. He dropped his hand on me, and I've left him a washi-geri them right in the chin. Bang. Put him on his backside. Never put him out or nothing, but it was a good kick. And he went on his backside. So at the end of the night, we're all having a couple of pints before we go home, like you used to do on the door. And never drove home, by the way. I only started driving when I was 27 or something. So it was late to me. So anyway, one of the guys, Steve Clark, worked on the doorway. He said to me, come to our gym on a Sunday. And I was like, sound. So I turned up with me shin guards and me boxing glove and me gum shield. None of that. They're all on this mat at the back. It's a bodybuilding gym. They're all on the mat at the back rolling round. And I was about, at the time, I was 16 and a half stone. And I rolled with these 10, 11 stone guys. Oh my God, I got chewed up badly. This is about 2000, 2001. And I got chewed up badly. I'd grappled a little bit before. I'd done a little bit with Ian Wilson because Ian Wilson liked the grappling side of things. But that was when I was 17, 18, and I hadn't really done nothing. The only thing I knew not to do was try and use and pose and strength. And then when I was getting submitted, I used strength and got submitted more, you know. So I got my mate's car and we were driving home, and it scared the pants out of me. Carney, honest to God, it scared the pants out of me. I thought I was this invincible kickboxing champion. And I thought, if one of these guys take me to the ground, I'm done, I'm lost. And that was the start of my MMA journey.
Well, that's interesting there because at that point you end up at a crossroads, Sean. So your ego takes you away from grappling, or your humbleness and a reality kicks in and it brings you towards grappling, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a massive believer of, like, you know, you get guys who come in the gym, like we had Bronson Price, a travelling guy kid, and he come in, he was already a tremendous boxer, he could kick left, right and centre, but now he's won with more submissions than he has strikes. And it was my philosophy, because I've had Bronson since he was 9 years old and he's now 18. And it was my philosophy that train what you're bad at. And it was something that was instilled from me when I played in goal when I was a kid. I was always too big to be an outfield football. And again, I grew up in a football town, not a rugby town. I suppose if I had grew up 6 miles down the road, I would have been with the oval shaped ball because of my size. But I ended up playing in goal, like most big lads do in Liverpool, you know, block the goal up. And I remember just training to be a good goalkeeper all the time. So I knew that my weakness in goalkeeping I attacked. So I thought in martial arts, I left the striking completely, more or less, for about 4 years and just done no-gi, jiu-jitsu, luta livre and sambo and bits of freestyle wrestling. Just the all-round grappling game I just hit for about 5 years. And it taught me life lessons, massive. And I still, to this day, I don't fight MMA anymore, but I still compete in grappling jiu-jitsu comps. I did up until last year, up until lockdown.
You're the head honcho of HAMMA. Now, how did that come about? And also, there's a bit of a story with the name HAMMA. So if you can share that with myself and the viewers.
So it's a funny story, really. We started off in Liverpool, in Huyton, in one of the areas where I grew up. And obviously, I'm well known in that area, the Knowsley area, Whiston, Prescott, Huyton, that's at end of Knowsley. And so people knew I was a black belt of kickboxing and knew I'd done a bit of grappling. So I started training with a guy, Alan Shepherd, who taught me a lot, really. I owe a lot to Alan. He called it Prescott Valley Tudo. It was the first time I'd done a bit of grappling and I'd done bits of striking. It was the first time I'd actually been with a coach who was putting it together. And after a while, his classes built up and he was doing really well and he had a good following, and he sort of brought me on as like his instructor, you know, next to him. And if you ever couldn't make the class, he'd say, Sean, take the class. And this is about 2003, 2004. And I found at that time, you know, I was in my late 20s. And at that time, I thought to myself, I could be a coach. You know, I've got a lot of knowledge. I've done it at that time. I've done it for 15 years then. And Alan just said to me, listen, mate, I've got a full-time job. I might be up and down the country. It was a really good job. It was an opportunity he couldn't miss. And he said, do you want to take the class on or should we just fold the gym? And I said, okay. And it was at the time, it was called Prescott Valley Tudo. Even though we were in Huyton, we called it Prescott Valley Tudo because we had initially done classes in Prescott. It's only a couple of miles apart, the areas. And I took the class on and I said, okay, mate, you give me an opportunity. And I hadn't seen him for about 6 months. And he rung me up saying, you're still teaching the class? Can I come and do your class? Which was, found amazing. This is someone who's teaching me, asking, could he come and be taught by me? You know, and that's a very humble, you know, respectful human being to do that, because I find humility one of the key aspects in life. I don't think if you've got humility, you know, if you haven't got humility, I don't think you're a decent human being, in fairness. So he come back and there was 55 people in the gym when he come in. And Alan had done well. Alan had got some of Alan's classes would be 15, 20 people in. And I had because I'm very child friendly, mate. So when people were ringing up saying, can you teach kids? Well, I went to the sports hall. I spoke to my wife. My wife's my admin girl. And I said, listen, I want to teach youngsters, not tiny youngsters, but from 8 or 9 and up where they can learn. So half the mat was youngsters. It was just becoming where I needed my own place. I was working in the NHS as a nurse. I was a psychiatric nurse for 20 years, 19 years. I was qualified about the last 7 years. I was working as a nurse and I was like having to say I can only do earlies because I wanted to teach martial arts 3 times a week. And Caroline said to me, would you not think about like doing this full time? Because, you know, financially, I was making as much money doing 5 hours martial arts a week as I was in the NHS full time. You know, I was getting 50 kids in sports hall paying me £5 each 3 times a week. You know, so I was making £400-500 a week teaching, and I was only making that working 40 hours a week in the NHS. So it was a no-brainer. And you've got to be honest, I did do it for the financial gain, I did. But you'll never be a millionaire as a coach until you get someone on the format of Conor McGregor or, you know, someone who's going to get you there. And we're on the brink of that. But going back to it, so we called ourselves Huyton Academy of Mixed Martial Arts, which is the acronym is HAMMA. But we couldn't get any funding from the local council. We couldn't get. They didn't approve of the sport in the first. You know, we're talking like 2005 here, so they didn't improve. You know, it was still being labelled as barbaric, and all the acumens that were coming at it were, for me, you know, it was frustrating because when you're trying to explain it to people, I'd sit down with Knowsley Borough Council and I'd say, we're just a mix of Olympic disciplines. You know, you like Olympics, you like the wrestling, that's an Olympic sport. Boxing is an Olympic sport. You know, judo is an Olympic sport. And obviously there's more to that, but a lot of them martial arts and sports we use in MMA. So you basically not giving us a chance before we can show you what we can do, you know. And we didn't get any help from the local authority. So my mate said, would you think about St. Helens? And St. Helens is one of the biggest towns in England. You know, the rugby team average attendance is like 12, 13,000 home games. So, you know, it's a big town when the rugby team are getting that sort of support. So I moved, but we couldn't keep Heighton Academy of Mixed Martial Arts. We couldn't keep Heighton because we weren't in Heighton, we were in St. Helens. And that's when we changed it to Hardcore Academy of Mixed Martial Arts. And people laugh because they still think we're called Heighton Mixed Martial Arts and we're in a different area.
Now, my first real introduction to you, Brother Sean, was when I got a message of you saying, hey, that logo that you got off Google search of some guy choking another person out, that's my logo. So respectfully, take it down. And I did, because it was yours and I did get it off Google. But how did that logo come about? And is there any story involved with that logo?
Well, this is the guy who designed my logo was doing classes. And we had an original logo, which was it was two hands and they were both wrapped and they had blood on the wraps. And it was good, but he was a graphic designer. I'm going to tell you, there's a twist to this story. So he was a graphic designer. The guy's name was Paul Smith, who's very famous now as a stand-up comedian, right? Hot Water Club, the ginger guy who everyone shares, who skips people. Paul Smith, yeah. He designed the HAMMA badge. Yeah, because he was a graphic designer before he was a comedian. So he was doing classes at HAMMA. He's a Heighton lad, born and bred. And he said, I'll knock something up for you. I said, what I don't want is I don't want a kick or, you know, your typical martial art T-shirt. I said, do me an armbar or a choke. I said, but what if you look at our badge, I said to him, I don't want someone just in a choke. I want someone fighting in a choke. And when you look at, like, because I've had idiots say to me on Facebook, it's not even on, you know, the fucking choke. Like, and I'm like, his hands in, and he's trying to get his chin in, and if you look at our logo, he's actually fighting the rear naked. You know, it's showing fight. It's not just showing a submission. And he designed it really well. And, you know, he sent it on a PDF, and then later on, it was the original JPEG was just, it was a nice choke, but then he took it away a couple of years later when we moved to St. Helens, and he'd done the artwork where you can see the actual pain on the lad's face, and I love it. I think when we go to shows, people know the Fighting Hammer when they see the badge, and it's nice because, you know, I support Everton, so if anyone sees an Everton badge, they know who Everton are. You know, they're one of the most famous football clubs in the world. So I wanted that, you know, or the Liverpool Alive Bird for anyone, or the Man United Devil. You know, I wanted people to understand that we had passion behind what we were doing, you know, and that's where the badge comes from. Yeah. So Paul Smith, the stand-up comic, designed the HAMMA badge. So he's not just famous for being a comic. His badge went all over this planet.
Well, that it is eye-catching, because that's why when I saw it, I thought, oh, I'll have that one.
It's a compliment. It's a compliment, yeah.
I had no right to take it. I just thought, oh, that looks really good. Rather than me design it, I'll just take that one. But it is, and you can see that grimace, you know, on both of their faces,
Yeah. Both lads are fighting to finish the fight or survive, you know, and that's fighting. That just sums up fighting, doesn't it?
You've mentioned a couple of people when you talked about your MMA journey. Specifically, can you let me know who it is that's either mentored or coached you and had a significant part on your MMA journey, and why?
The person I've learned the most of in my life, and this is a very famous person, a kid who's fought in the UFC, and in my opinion, one of the greatest martial artists I've ever seen. And I'm not going to blow smoke up his ass, because he was with HAMMA for 6.5, 7 years. It was Dave Faulkner. And Dave was on a season of The Ultimate Fighter. And he had an health issue there, and he was unable to continue. He was sort of promised by, I won't say who, because I might be friends with him later on in life, but he was sort of promised he was going to be on the finale, and he never really got there. But that's another issue. But he's never been in a gi for grading, but he's third degree black belt level jiu-jitsu, in my opinion. And his judo is just second to none. He can throw you from anywhere, and he wrestled collegiately from being 5 or 6 years old. So his all-round game was just, he's left-footed, right-handed. So his all-round game was just amazing. And I taught him quite a bit about the striking side of things, because he was a grappler who learned how to strike, and I was a striker who learned how to grapple. And we sort of we were like peas and carrots, as Forrest Gump would say. You know, we just worked really, really well. Stopping and thinking before you're doing. I mean, the problem is with fighting is it's like the adage where you can get a so my dad will say this adage: you can get a sheepdog, a border collie, and it'll go and get your paper in the morning. It'll come back. It'll go onto the farm. It'll put 50 different sheep into 5 different pens with different colours on the back. A Staffordshire Bull Terrier can't do any of that, but it'll twat the sheepdog. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, sometimes you don't have to be the brightest tool in the box to be the best fighter. Just, it's like Tony Bebbington, who I work with in my jiu-jitsu, and he's a massive influence on me. I've only been in the gi 4 years. I always avoided the gi, and everyone used to say to me, "Oh, you love gi, get in the gi. You know, when you get old, you love gi." And I used to go, "No, it's not for me." And I've just got my purple belt in a gi, and I'm quite proud of myself. Even though if I had started, but if my auntie had a dick, she'd be my uncle. You know what I mean? So it's one of those. But going back to your original post, Dave Faulkner, for me, taught me sort of everything, really. And Tony Bebbington said something to me the other week, and it was something that Dave said to me years ago. He said, make your first reaction the right reaction. Because naturally, it's not normally. You know, people turn away from chokes instead of turning into them. You know, it's just a natural reaction, defensive mechanisms to do the wrong thing. You know, a lot of grappling is retraining your brain to do what your brain would tell you not to do naturally. You know, like a backdoor escape, where you bring your legs, away from them, not towards the head, not away from the head. And people are like, you go out that way, and we're like, it works, and that's what Dave sort of, working with Dave and Tony recently, has taught me, that fighting can be a doing process rather than a thinking process. But you need to have trained the thought before you fight. So when you naturally react to something, it's the right reaction. It's the right decision you're making, because ultimately high level sport is all about decision making, and that's something that as a coach is frustrating, because you can put someone in there, you can prepare them for everything. I mean, the only 2 things I can do is get you fit and give you technique. They're the only 2 things I can do as a coach. Your bollocks and your heart are in you, and they're genetic. You've got them or you haven't. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of guys who've got a lot of heart.
It's interesting you mentioned about your first reaction being the right reaction, because I'll give you an example. For me, this made me think about when I'm reversing the trailer. My first reaction always is wrong, because I want to turn one way and it slides out, and then I have to kind of force my brain to think, no,
yeah.
turn the wheels the other way. But it's getting over that, and it's easier said than done, right?
Do you know what? I should use that analogy rather than the Bull Terrier one, because I agree with that. I've had the trailer on the back of my car, and especially when you have to reverse out of a corner and you went down the wrong way, say you're going to skip or something, you think, and your brain tells you to do the wrong thing, so you've got to retrain your brain. I think a lot of jiu-jitsu is like that. A lot of jiu-jitsu is like that, you know, and exactly right. That's a great analogy, mate.
So you mentioned about the testing time and mental health. We are in a difficult time right now, Sean. And how are you keeping yourself busy and trying to help others to not just the physical side, but to deal with the mental side of the current climate that we're in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk about it openly. I struggle with mental health since my mum passed away. So my mum passed away in 2011. So it's 10 years this year. And I was very close. She was your typical, if you ever watch Bread, you know, she was the typical archetypal Scouse mother who sort of everyone loved. All my cousins loved her. All my family loved her. She was like, you know, everything to me. And when she died, I struggled with my mental health problem. And I try and do a lot of posts about mental health. And, you know, and I struggled with alcohol for a long, long time. I had an alcohol problem. And it was never evident. I mean, a lot of people did see me pissed, but it was never evident in my job. I never let it affect my job, but it was like getting to the stage where I was never an alcoholic, but I was sort of alcoholic dependent. You know, I couldn't go a week without drinking, and I'd look forward to like Friday, Saturday and Sunday being smashed. And about 14 months ago, I decided, I cut my drinking down gradually, but about 14 months ago, I decided to go teetotal. And it's been the best thing I've ever done for my mental health. And in these testing times, it was weird because, you know, everyone else is coming on. Great, I can get drunk every day. I'm not at work. You know, in the first lockdown, when I was thinking, I couldn't think of a more way, you know, a sort of more psychosomatic effect it would have on my mental health if I started drinking again. You know, I would definitely spiral into depression again because I haven't got a job to do at the moment. And a lot of my fighters are struggling. I was speaking to Bobby Pallett this morning, and Bobby's an absolute warrior. You know, he's a Bellator fighter now. And Bobby's, you know, he trains like I've never seen anyone train like him. Him and Ashley Reese are just the hardest trainers I've ever met in my life. They're just unbelievable trainer, and they're really struggling with it. You know, not because Ashley has to come to Hammer to get high level sparring. He trains as hard as he can. Ashley, I was very impressed with his interview, but he needs the high level grappling, and Bobby needs the high level sparring, and I think it really does affect them. It really does affect the mental health.
Now, during this lockdown, I'm aware that at some stage the police had come to your gym. Can you talk myself and the viewers through what happened there?
Well, during this lockdown, the police have come to me gym. I would say it's about 7 or 8 times the police have been to me gym. But since that was in the first and this lockdown. But the other night we were coming out, and the police come over to me, and they were saying, "Can I ask you what you're doing?" I said, "I'm just shutting my gym." And I was with Conor Hignett and one of my heavyweights, Phil Bills. He's an amateur guy, but he's about to turn professional. In fact, I've just turned him professional. And they said, "Well, you're breaking COVID rules." And I said, "I've been very, very strict with the protocol. You know, I've stuck to all the rules. I'm a big believer in supporting society. I'm quite as people know on social media, I'm quite a people person, and my politics is centre of the left more than centre of the right. So, you know, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. I think conspiracy theories are ruining the world, but I don't think anyone believes anything anymore. And I just spoke to the police. I was very polite and articulate. You know, they've got a hard job to do. I totally appreciate that. But I explained to them that under the statutes, because that's what they are, the statutes, they're not laws. I am allowed to train elite and professional fighters. And he was like, the sergeant was a lovely fella. And he was like sort of saying to me, "Okay, cool." But there was a young constable with him, and there was a female constable who she was sound as well, just a young constable. And he was sort of desperate to like find me. I could see, you know, he was like, well, why are you here? You know, and I was like, I'm just doing my job. I'm allowed to train, you know, elite athletes. Who's elite? I said, him. And I said, and he looked at Conor Ignat, and, you know, Conor's ears aren't the best. You know, both of them are quite severely cauliflowered. And I said, you don't need to look at his ears to tell him he competes. You don't get them just from, you know, they're not just Jimmy is, you know. So, and I said, and Phil Bills, you know, he's had like six fights, and have you got any proof? Now, I know by law I didn't have to provide proof, but I'm not the type of person to be evasive. I didn't want to cause any problems or any issues, so I just said, yeah, okay. Showed him your fights, and basically, as soon as they started showing fights, the young copper, and he was only about early 20s, he was like, oh, right, okay. And I'm like, so am I breaking any rules? And in fairness, the sergeant was like, no, you haven't broken any rules, you're just sticking to protocols. But just to let people know, people have been ringing up because we're in the town centre, so we can't hide anything. We're right in the town centre. I mean, it's a big town centre as well, you know. So I was just a bit frustrated that people are ringing the police, saying that we're open for business, and we're not, and I'm losing a lot of money because my building is massive. Listen, this is a really hard time. I think the most frustrating aspect of it, and I know you know your prior history yourself, Carney. The most frustrating thing is everyone in every walk of life has got different people who work in that industry. And I think calling one person one thing because they do that job is ridiculous. I mean, I work in the NHS, and every individual nurse I work with, doctor I work with, had a different approach. So, you know, we're all human beings. And I was trying to explain to them that, you know, my approach is I'm going to stick to the rules, but I'm still going to work. And that he sort of like understood that. I've got a number now from the police station to show the police that I've been in and explain the situation. So, you know, they've sort of got the heads up now if they pull me.
They would have created an incident reference number, and they can then resurrect the information off there if there's any issues. You also mentioned about, you know, from society, they're all different walks of life. And you're right, because when I used to work for police, I used to say to people, I said, look, even in the police service, we're a segment of society. You know, you'll get good people, you'll get not so good, you get very truthful with integrity, and then you get deceitful. So it doesn't mean that you should tarnish everyone with the same brush, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm the same. I mean, I worked in the NHS. I try and conduct myself as a human being first and foremost, with feelings and compassion. And I think sometimes I work with nurses whose empathy was lacking, and compassion was lacking. And I think sometimes I felt like saying to my colleagues, even though it wasn't my place, because they were only sort of the same, if you want, rank as me or level as I was as a nurse, I felt like saying to my colleagues, you know, did you really have to speak to someone like that? You know, and it's hard, and you know yourself, it's hard when you're working with someone, especially when I was on the door. I found this more when I was on the door. Because basically, if you're a doorman, you're the policeman of that club, you know, or the policeman of that bar. And I used to I've worked with a few people on the door that I didn't care for, and I've had issues with them. And in my last 5 years of working on the door, I was the head doorman on most doors I worked with, so I was the boss on the door. And if I seen any what I would consider bullying or power abuse, I would pull it straight away.
It's interesting you mentioned the doors, Sean, because when I joined the police, one of the things that I was asked, you know, what do you bring to the police service? What skills do you that's transferable? And at the time, I was working for the probation service, I was working for the youth service in a youth club, and I was working on the doors as well. And I said to him, it's the door work that did it for me, because that stood me in good stead. You preempt stuff. It also gives you that sense of where you always have your back to the wall and you've got your radar on, and you're able to talk to people because you're the one that can either de-escalate or exacerbate situations, right?
100%. And a big thing, because I was a mental health nurse for a long time, psychiatric nurse for a long time. So dealing with people who don't react to situations the way normal people. There's no such thing as a normal person. You know, I'm not saying, you know, we've got to label anyone with anything, but you know, people who've got psychosis, people who've got severe mental health issues, it's hard to reason with, and that was a big help on the door, because when people are intoxicated, as you know yourself, they react completely different. Their inhibitions are gone, and where they'd normally talk, they'd throw a punch, or where they'd normally throw a punch, some people laugh, some people giggle, and it's just learning how to deal with humanity and people's reactions to things. And I understand that everyone's different, and that's why when I was dealing with the police, I mean, I've seen a lot of videos on social media, and I do get that people don't have to give the name. People, unless they're committing an offence, and people don't have to. But surely, in my opinion, if you haven't done it wrong, and you know, you are just on your way to work. I mean, I shared a video yesterday, and the reason he didn't give his name in, was a guy in Birmingham going to work. He's a care worker, and the two coppers have been suspended for a week and reprimanded. And they pulled him in. He was going to work, and he didn't give his name. And at first, when I seen that video, I thought, you know, it's your own fault for being sort of evasive. And then I seen a West Midlands news report. He'd been pulled 5 times that week on his way to work. 5 times. Mixed race lad. And he said he was just sick of giving his name and address in. It's like he was saying, I give me name and address in 5 times. I'm going to work, I'm a key worker. And I was, the reason, it might have been evasive, he said, and it might have caused an issue, but I was just sick of it. So I can understand swings and roundabouts, as they say. You know what I mean, Carney? So it is what it is, really.
Sean, my brother, I'm aware of a couple of people that are coming out of HAMMA who are doing really well. One of them being Conor Hignett, who I did a podcast with, and Ashley Reese. Are there other people that are on the radar that we need to kind of be aware of and look out for as they carry on their MMA journey from HAMMA? Yeah,
I mean, to be honest with you, Saf, I'd be doing everyone a disservice if I picked individuals out. And as a coach, you don't want to do that, because people, like we've just been saying, people are individuals, and what wouldn't hurt my feelings would hurt other people's feelings, you know. But yeah, I mean, obviously Bobby Pallett's coming through. Bobby's a Bellator fighter now, so Bobby's got a lot to prove. He's unbeaten, you know, 5-0, I think he is now. As a professional fighter, he had a very good amateur career. I think he only lost 2 of 12 fights, or 3. He was competing when he was an amateur. The only time he ever got beat was at lightweight. Never been beat as a welterweight. So I put it down to, a couple of times he got stopped early, and I put it down to dehydration of the brain on the weight cut, because people get knocked out a lot easier after the heavyweight cut. And I really don't care what anyone says. I've been in this game for 25 years, more 35 years if we were talking about kickboxing, and I've seen people knocked out when they cut weight. You know, I remember still to a certain extent up in Scotland and the North East, some shows still do same day weigh-in, which I never really agreed with, because people used to say, well, you know, people won't cut any weight. That's a load of bollocks. People were still cutting weight and fighting on the same day. And I think if you're dehydrating your brain, you know, you're going to get stopped. And that's the only reason Bobby's been stopped. Going back to the gym, we've literally I've had about 4 guys come from other gyms during this lockdown, who other gyms have shut, unfortunately. And Phil Bills being one of them, big heavyweight I've just got. I won't mention a few others because it's not really been announced, but I've finally got Bronson Price. He went out to the IMAFs with me last year. And really, the IMAFs was a big opening for him, because he's always just sailed through life, Bronson. He's a traveller, so they don't really have as many rules as we do in life, you know. And him and his dad are good friends of mine, you know, and they'll say that. So maybe the discipline sometimes wasn't there with him. Not with me. He listens to everything I say and does everything I say. He's a good lad, but his discipline outside the gym, drinking, I think, you know, a little bit too much partying, a little bit too much. And he's only an 18-year-old kid, so he was in the junior IMAFs. We went out there, And I wanted him to go out there at lightweight, and he was like, no, I can't fight. I can't maintain that weight for a week. He could have, right? But he's just a lazy get. And we go out there, and he goes in against a massive Russian, right, straight away. Done well, had the lad in an armbar, lad escaped and beat him on points. So he never progressed then. And it was like, I said, you know what, Bronson, if we had went there at lightweight, you would have done really well. And it wasn't, it's not because it was a massive weight cut for him. It's just maintaining a nice chain weight, you know, and you know, maintaining 74 kilos. So you only have 4 kilos to cut instead of going up to 80 kilos with a little bit of a belly on him, you know. And it's just discipline. And I think my best fighters coming through are going to be the ones that are the most disciplined. I've certainly changed as a human being over the last 2 years. I'm a lot more disciplined with myself. It's weird, isn't it? You get to, I'm in me, you know, coming towards my late 40s, and I'm more disciplined with my regime and what I eat, and I don't consume alcohol at all, and you know, anymore. And I think what I've done is stemmed a lot of the guys in the gym who used to like parties stop doing it. I've just turned Matt Rodriguez professional. He was the almighty welterweight champion, and he's a massive welterweight, 6 foot, cuts from about 85 kilos, 90. Sorry, can go up to 90 kilos, Matt. And he was 6-1 and 1 draw, and he's just turned pro. He's a really good prospect. A guy I'm really, really excited about is I've got a guy called Richie Lunt, 9 times world kickboxing champion. He's had 1 MMA fight, but he wasn't with us, and he got wrestled like you do if you were fighting a kickboxer. You know, as we say, wrestle fucked him. You know what I mean? So, you know, and now his wrestling's good. We've got his wrestling good, and he's about to tear it up in the pro ranks. His striking is as good as Michael Venom Page's, and I'm not joking. And he's a little Scouse ginger kid. So wait until you see him. He can kick with his left foot, question mark front kick, Superman lead jabs, spinning back fist, Superman jumping spinning kicks. Honest to God, it's just so good. And he's coming through the ranks. He'll be one, I think that'll catch the eye. So because he's such a finely tuned striker. And Art Connor's coming back into MMA. Art Connor had 1 MMA fight when he was 17. I know he's my son, but he's probably the best natural grappler I've ever seen in my life. And I'm saying that not because he's my lad, because he is. You know, you've probably seen the flying armbar he done at the World Championships last year. I mean, John Kavanagh was really brilliant. You know, I speak to John regularly. He's a good friend, and I was speaking to him, and I sent him Connor's armbar because we showed him it around the pool when we were at Bellator in Milan. And he sat with us all afternoon. He's absolutely hilarious, by the way, as well. Dry wit, perfect. I sent him it, and next minute he shared it. And I was like, wow, you know, so good for him to share. You know, he's got 650,000 followers on social media. So, you know, when John shares it, you know, Joe Rogan's seeing it. You know, Conor McGregor's seeing it. You know, people are out there, but what people won't understand, and you need to go on Art Connor's Instagram and Facebook to understand how good a striker Art Connor is, because he's a really good striker. His brother, my other son, Owen, was a national champion twice at kickboxing. So if I could have Art Connor's striking like Owen's and our Owen's jiu-jitsu like Art Connor's, we'd have a UFC fighter.
I'm aware of HAMMA, and it's a massive gym. Are there other coaches that help with running the gym? And if so, what role do they play?
Yeah, I mean, coaching-wise, this is why we've been so successful over the years. Coaching-wise, I've never, ever, even when I first was teaching, I'd done everything on my own. I teach the grappling, I teach the striking, I teach the jiu-jitsu. And I'm going to be honest with you, sometimes I found myself wanting. We go to shows and other coaches are shouting stuff, techniques I've never heard. And I think every coach will stick their hand up and say they've seen something new. And it was learning on the job, really. And that's when I brought Dave Faulkner in. Because Dave had come and trained with us, come in dead humble, done my classes. And then I rung him, and he's like the gypsy of MMA in Liverpool. He bounces around every gym, from Manchester to Liverpool. He goes everywhere, Dave. And I actually nailed him down and said to him, "Will you be my coach?" And he come on with me. Me and Dave for a long time were the head coaches, me and him. I had Jason Gavin, who's Bo Gavin's dad. They're in a different gym now. But fair play, he really helped me. Really helped me a lot. Such a good Thai boxing coach. Really good. I've got 2 wrestling coaches. So I've got Charlie, a really good wrestling coach. He still wrestles, competes now. He hasn't been able to train us since maybe all of 2020, really. But I've also got Eddie Johnson, who was 5 times British wrestling champion. He teaches the night classes, the MMA classes, for the beginners and the intermediates. But his wrestling is amazing. Eddie's dad works with us as well. I've got Jamie Pio doing the kids classes. I teach kids classes as well. I love teaching the kids. I love it. I can go from a plane ride from EFC South Africa in front of 16,000 people, and on the Tuesday night I'll be teaching 5 kids, 5 4-year-old kids, and I love doing that. I'll never ever stop doing that. I love it. I enjoy it. We've got Tony Bebbington, who's our Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu head honcho. He's our black belt. High level, big guy, 6'4", 18 and a half, 19 stone, big man. He's the only man I've ever been absolutely raped by, so honestly, mate, he's so good. And who else? Our Connor and Connor Hignett obviously run the gym. They're the main boys now. I'm just sort of like the head coach. I'm sort of like an overseer now, and they took a lot of pressure off me.
Now, one of the things I want to ask you, there's been a name that's been going around in St. Helens for years now. And I want to know, one, if you know this guy, and also if he's around, and if you can share some stories with us, if you've heard of him. It's somebody called Jonny Wellies. So who is this guy, Jonny Wellies?
So I just seen him this morning. I just put a post on this morning. Jonny Wellies is what you'd call a homeless guy. He's not technically homeless. I believe he's got a house, but he likes living on the streets, and he must be in his 70s. I mean, I'm a Liverpool lad originally, but my wife's a St. Helens girl, so I've been in the St. Helens community for about 30 years. I've been with my wife since I was 17, so it's a long time, 29, 30 years. And I remember seeing this guy on the streets, and the snow coming down, and him walking around in a pair of like wellies with no socks, 3/4 length shorts, and an owl coat. Nothing, and he always wears. He's got a habit of wearing like you always see him with like hospital pajamas, like bright green or bright blue pajamas, where he's been in hospital and just walked out with the pajamas on, And honestly, I seen him this morning. He must be 75. How's he surviving? He's my dad's 5 years younger than my dad. And my dad moans about everything. My dad's, honest to God, my dad's not a glasses half full guy. My glass has never been full. You know what I mean? My dad's the biggest, and I'll say to him, "You're hypochondriac," and my dad will say, "I'm a sick hypochondriac." So I see my dad moaning. He's in his lovely house with his car and his heating, and I see this old guy walking down the road, and everyone in St. Helens, everyone says about Jonny Wellies, he's one hard bastard. He is one hard bastard. And I've seen him in the street arguing with Dorman, when they're walking past, and Dorman say something trying to be funny, and he'll say to them, "Do you want to go? Do you want to go?" And he's that aggressive that the Dorman go, "Leave it, mate." You're on the lose. If you beat him up, you're on the losing, aren't you? Because no one's going to like you. But he tends to be like a really amicable, nice old fella, to be honest with you. He's a legend, though. He's a bigger legend in St. Helens as Per Blackie is in Liverpool. So.
You've been on this martial arts journey for decades now, Sean, and you're at a really good level as a coach and an athlete. There's other people that are on a similar journey that may be behind you a couple of years. From your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give them? Don't
be in a rush to be successful. I was, when I very first started, I wanted to make a name for myself, and if I'm being honest, and I've got to take the rough with the smooth. Maybe sometimes when I was very first starting, I haven't done it for at least 5 years, put people into fights when they weren't ready because they wanted to fight, and maybe because I wanted, to have a load of guys on one show, I was running my own ACB show, as you done the MCing for me, and maybe guys fighting on my own show, you know, thinking, oh, I need to sell, you know, don't do it for the wrong reasons, you know, selling tickets, and I don't do it that anymore. You know, there's a lot of people who are in martial arts for the economics, you know. I make an all right living out of it. I'm not struggling. I'm fortunate to have been in business long enough that the government has supported me a little bit during this lockdown. I know a lot of guys who aren't that way. And I'm a self-employed guy who actually pays taxes. So I've actually got some money back off the government. But what I would say to people is the main thing with martial arts is don't try and be someone you're not. I've done that. I've been a much better coach than I was a fighter. You know, I only had a handful of MMA fights myself, more kickboxing fights. If you're not willing to learn, I've got kids coming to me and say, Sean, have you seen this? And they'll show me something, and I'll go, oh yeah, like, and pretend I've seen it, and then notch it off. You know, I haven't seen that. I'll have to look at that because the kid will catch me with it when I'm grappling. Always have humility running through your backbone of martial arts. Remember, you know, people always say you're only as good as your last fight. As a coach, you're only as good as the advice you give to people. And if you're giving people bad advice, they're going to pass that on to someone else. And you're going to leave a legacy of shite. So what you need to do is be honest with yourself, first and foremost. Don't push yourself past your own limits, because when you do, you never succeed, ever. Just be patient. Patience is everything, and humility is everything, and that's what I believe. I mean, I've seen guys make mistakes. I've made loads of mistakes. I remember Albie Bimson saying something to me, and it's a great expression. A good coach has made your mistakes for you.
Sean, thank you so much for joining us, sharing the time and knowledge with myself and